Welcome to another Rolled in Reacts episode. This car came in with a broken camshaft after the customer had just upgraded from a stock camshaft but had over-tightened the cam bolts and also kept the engine at 7,500 RPM for longer than recommended while benching the car on a dyno. Customer states, starting issues. The mechanics discovered that the customer had installed a wiring harness by himself and had removed the fuse box in the process, but had forgotten to reinstall it afterwards. The owner of this car came in because they said it ran rough. The mechanics asked the customer when they last had an oil change, and the customer just replied that he didn't know. Customer states, very hard to get the car in gear. Yeah, sure looks like it, bud. And this customer came in needing 4 new rims and tires after they claimed to have hit a light post that had fallen down on the road while they were going 90 miles an hour. These mechanics were just left in this Audi Q7 to do an oil change on it when they got a little surprise. Apparently, the owner had recently replaced the driver's side airbag at a different local garage because they were trying to get the airbag light to turn off, but had damaged the wiring sockets in the process, which caused the airbag to deploy. This truck rolled in because the owner said that the cabin fan randomly shuts itself off and the low beams flickers a lot. The mechanics found the trailer hitch all beat up. This customer rolled in with their car because they had some major brake issues after their friend had helped them renovate the brake lines, and this is the mess that the mechanics found. The owner of this car came in because they had problems with the transmission being very noisy after another shop had tried repairing a leak with some JB weld. And this truck rolled in for its yearly oil and filter change with a missing tire and a pretty messed up wheel well. When asked about what had happened, the customer just replied, "I went to Vegas for the weekend, but the rest is a bit blurry." This car had a total engine failure after the customer had been driving it almost completely without oil for over 6 months. And this customer came in saying that their truck has started to run hot. The mechanics found the oil looking like pea soup and the head gasket to be done for. The owner of this car had driven it into the shop for a repair quote, but when the mechanic said that it would be cheaper for them to just buy a new car, the customer got really upset and drove away. Engine 1, customer's wallet 0. This mechanic was just replacing the brake rotors on this customer's car when he noticed a strange little device in the windshield. Upon inspection, it turned out to be a 4-port Twinkle RGB-W Meteor ceiling car roof shooting star light LED fiber optic light starry sky lamp ARP music remote control. And when the oil is this thick, you know it's gonna be real expensive for the customer. Customer states, side mirror keeps picking fights with the window. The owner of this car loves to listen to music and was just in to get a new extra battery installed so that he can install another set of amps and speakers on the roof. And ye shall not forget these words, that Jesus loves you no matter who you are or where you are in life. The owner of this truck was in because they had a random clunking sound ever since their buddy had done some frame repair work for them. This Toyota Highlander came in because it had some major oil leaks coming from the engine and transmission housing after the customer had tried a beginner's rock crawler course on a private off-roading compound the weekend before. Customer states, coolant level warning light keeps coming on, has been refilling coolant every 2 to 3 days, but problem still remains. The mechanic found one of the heater hoses that transport coolant to the cabin's heater core to be the main culprit. The owner of this car finally came in to get some new tires installed after driving on factory tires for almost a decade. This customer came in complaining about their van running rough, and when the mechanics went to change the oil and filter, they noticed that it hadn't been done in over 73,000 miles. And this guy rolled in with his fully crewed Jeep ready to conquer the 7 seas. The owner of this car came in because they said that something felt wrong with the four-wheel drive and the mechanics discovered that the transfer case had blown itself up. This customer had another shop repair their timing chain for them, but it didn't go so well, so now the customer needs an engine replacement. And the owner of this fairly new GMC Yukon XL rolled in on a tow truck after the customer had heard a loud pop, zing, and bing sound before the engine stalled. And this mechanic is definitely used to working in sticky situations. The owner of this car came in complaining about a loud whining noise from the transmission, and when the mechanics went to drain the transmission fluid, they got 15 quarts in total out of it. This customer rolled in with their home-built camper car because they needed an oil change. The mechanics did the oil change as requested, but said that it was hella difficult to get to the driver's seat because the car was full of trash and the driver's door was locked, so they had to use the passenger door. This customer had a broken drive shaft on his car, so he got a bit creative with it, but rolled into the shop on a tow truck because he wasn't creative enough. Customer states, car sounds like a giant mosquito that had too much Taco Bell. This customer came in because their car ran really hot and the car smoked a lot when driving. Apparently, the customer's cousin had tried fixing the problem with some JB Weld, but that only made it worse, and now the customer needs a new engine. And nope, this is not the key to Davy Jones' locker. It's actually the key that you use to change safety belts. This car rolled in because the customer complained about really loud clunks when driving, and the mechanics found the right upper strut mount to be pretty much non-existent. And this customer came in with their semi-truck after they had started hearing a loud whirring sound when driving at highway speeds. Turns out that the lug nuts on one of the wheels hadn't been tightened properly, which had caused the wheel bearing to give up, and it was just sheer luck that the wheel hadn't fallen off completely. The owner of this car brought it in for an oil change and had apparently gotten a flat as they were driving to the shop from their house. This car rolled in with a destroyed engine after the timing belt broke. The customer had refused to have it replaced when he was in for his yearly service 3 weeks prior, claiming that timing belts are actually made to last longer than what's stated by the manufacturer. This Honda CR-V was brought in by the customer after they tried installing a tow hitch by themselves, using some chains and parts they found at a local hardware store. And this car had miraculously managed to pass a safety inspection just a month ago, and came in to finally have some new brake rotors installed. This truck rolled in on a tow truck because it had major starting issues, some rod knock and whining sounds from the transmission. The mechanics found all this engine oil in the transmission, and it turned out that the customer had an oil leak from the oil filter, and because of that they'd been topping up the engine oil, but had accidentally used the transmission dipstick tube to do it. This car was in for a tire rotation, but when the mechanic went to sit in it, he found this. Luckily, the shop's intern took one for the team and drove the car into the shop. The owner of this car rolled in saying it was really hard to switch gears. The mechanics discovered that someone had done some questionable repairs to their transmission gear selector cable, and replacing it fixed the issue. Customer states, drove home from a barbecue party last night and thinks he hit something because he has scraping sounds at all speeds. Turned out to be a piece of guardrail. Customer came in for a new timing belt saying, "Hey, I need you to get her done for me by 9, okay, because me and Big Tater Corndog are going gator hunting this evening." This car came in for a dunking sound after another shop had done a front end alignment on it just a week ago. And this customer came in with a weird sound coming from their wheels after they hit a curbside and tried repairing the damage by themselves. The customer eventually ended up scrapping the car because it was cheaper than repairing it. This customer rolled into the shop with a major oil leak after a neighbor had borrowed their car to move some stuff from their garage, but forgot to mention that the garage was out in the middle of nowhere. The owner of this Dodge Daytona lives out in Vermont and rolled in for its yearly service when the mechanic discovered that it had quite the rust problems and had started falling apart pretty badly. This mechanic was about to change some shocks that the customer had brought in themselves, but it turned out that the shocks weren't actually the same. This car rolled in with a totaled front-end suspension after the owner had hit a pothole going over 100 miles per hour, saying that they didn't see the hole because it was covered by a piece of cardboard. And this customer came in complaining about their car's floor mats constantly being wet. The technician discovered that one of the rubber door seals had ruptured and changing it fixed the problem. The owner of this car came in because their turbo sounded strange and the car seemed sluggish. The customer also said that they had recently fixed a rattling sound that came from the air filter by putting a furniture pad on top of it. The mechanics discovered that the furniture pad had gotten sucked into the turbo, which had caused all the issues. This customer brought in their extra crusty, rusted out truck for some brake work, and this is what it looked like underneath. Customer states metallic pops coming from front when turning. Customer came in saying that he wants to order new brake rotors, brake calipers, and brake pads because he recently failed a safety inspection due to bad brakes, and this is what the mechanic found. The owner of this minivan rolled in saying that it had started to sound like a Harley-Davidson motorcycle overnight. The mechanics found the exhaust to be a bit leaky. This car rolled in after the customer said that he had been driving it to work in the morning when he noticed the engine temperature gradually creeping up. Turned out that another shop recently changed coolant hoses but hadn't secured one of them properly, so it had slipped off and caused almost all the coolant to leak out. Customer states whining noises coming from transmission and the engine knocks a little too. The owner of this car had recently bought it at a local dealership and gotten a new AC compressor installed before picking it up. But just a week later, the car wouldn't start and the mechanics found one of the battery cables screwed onto the frame like this. Customer came in really worried saying that he thinks the engine has a major oil leak somewhere because the dipstick is completely bone dry. Turned out to be a broken dipstick tube. Customer states AC doesn't work in the back. The mechanics found that the rear air vents had recently been replaced and that whoever did it had gone a bit wild with the hot glue. This car came in because it had quite the engine rattle and misfire. The mechanic found a cracked piston to be the cause of the problem. This truck rolled in because the customer said it handled like a hovercraft and had started to creak and clunk like crazy, after another shop had done some work on the subframe for them. And this truck had turned itself into a steam train. The owner of this car stated that whenever they go over speed bumps or curbsides, there's a strange hollow dunk sound, and it only started after their friend helped them install new brake pads. This car was in because the rear plate lights had stopped working, and when the mechanics went to check on the wiring harness, they discovered the remains of the customer's 2-month-old lunch marinating in the trunk. This car was in because the owner had attempted to do a front-end adjustment by himself, using some tools he'd gotten off of a Chinese website for cheap. But the instructions were in Chinese, so the customer had just improvised instead, which ended up costing him new control arms and ball joints. This customer had installed a lift kit on his truck together with his father, but right as they took it out for a test drive, they heard a loud pop and then the rear wheels just locked up. This car had quite the leaking problem, and the mechanics found that the customer had hit something on the road that had pierced a hole through the gas tank, which someone had tried fixing with some duct tape. This mechanic was changing the axle shaft on this truck and had to get a bit creative to get it out of there because the garage he was in had the car lift installed pretty close to a wall. The owner of this car came in saying, "Chip and Dale invaded my engine bay and turned it into a hookah lounge." This car rolled in because it kept overheating after the customer had replaced a water pump on it by himself, but had lost the gasket in the process and just used silicone as a sealant instead. This customer had tried to install the wrong sized lug nuts and had to come into the shop because he couldn't get them loose. This car was in because the battery kept draining itself and the right side tail lights and license plate lights didn't work at all. The mechanic discovered that the customer recently had installed a new muffler by himself, but one of the holding brackets were broken, so he just bolted the muffler straight onto the undercarriage and pierced right through a wiring harness. The owner of this Lambo came in for a new windshield because a semi-truck that had been in front of them had a rim break loose and split into two pieces before crashing into the customer's windshield. This mechanic was working on this truck's intake manifold when he accidentally dropped a socket into the exhaust and had to go socket fishing to get it back. This car had lots of smoke coming out of the engine bay, and it turned out to be a pretty annoying coolant leak from one of the heater hoses. The owner of this car had come in to ask the mechanics how much it would cost to repair one of her rear wheels, but when she heard the price, she just took off. This car rolled in because it needed its low and high beams replaced, but the mechanic also noticed that it had quite the oil leak that the customer didn't mention anything about. Customer states that he installed new brake pads by himself, but has had a terrible brake squeak ever since and thinks it might be the brake shims. The mechanics found that the brake pads were installed the wrong way, so the customer was technically correct. This car came in with a really sludgy engine, and upon checking the service book, the mechanic saw that the last oil change was 48,000 miles ago. This customer was in with their Jeep after it had started telling too many knock-knock jokes. And this customer's truck had a really whiny rear differential after the customer had taken it to a local drag race. Customer came in saying that his brakes keep seizing and he has tried using every single anti-seize product that he could find at the local gas station. The owner of this SUV rolled in saying that it doesn't want to shut off and thinks there might be an electrical issue. Turned out to be a 5-minute job for the mechanic. The owner of this car said that they recently got a new exhaust installed, but that they've had a strange humming sound and strong roasted smell in the driver's cab ever since. Whoever installed the exhaust had installed it way too close to the undercarriage. This utility truck got towed into the shop after the driver had backed over a concrete roadblock when trying to back out of a tight alleyway. Customer came in complaining about a vibration in their steering wheel and rough engine idling. This truck rolled into the shop leaking like crazy after the customer had tried repairing a leaky valve cover gasket with some hot glue. The owner of this truck was in because they had been towing it behind their RV and had left it in reverse, which ended up wrecking the transmission and much of the drivetrain. Customer came in saying that she's had a strange scent when driving longer distances, and once on the lift, the mechanic discovered that the entire undercarriage was covered in white. Afternoon tea, anyone? This car rolled in after the customer had hit a 6-pack of Dr. Peppers while accelerating to get a parking spot outside Walmart. Customer said that their truck had started running rough ever since they topped off the AdBlue in it. Let us know in the comments below what you think the customer actually topped off the tank with. This customer turned out to be another mechanic that came in asking his mechanic friend for help. Apparently, he had tried doing an oil change on one of his customer's cars by draining the oil through the dipstick tube when the draining hose suddenly got stuck. The owner of this car rolled in saying that they had their car in for an oil change at another local garage, but that they've had a rattling sound ever since. The mechanic found that it was because someone had dumped a bunch of cookies inside the engine bay. This customer came in with their fancy British car asking if there was anything they could do besides renovating the engine to stop it from knocking. The mechanic said that it was either an engine renovation, engine swap, or the junkyard, because this knock is loud. Customer came in with their car saying that the transmission had stopped working all of a sudden while they were at a McDonald's drive-thru. The mechanics found the transmission to be totally wrecked, and the customer ended up getting a new one installed through their insurance company. And this shop had created some pretty cool art pieces out of some old exhaust parts. Customer said that he fixed his broken steering by himself 2 weeks ago, but that he'd done it in a rush and now had a clunking sound, and this is what the mechanic found. This car rolled in with its engine pretty much swimming in oil after the customer recently had a couple of new gaskets and oil filter installed at a quick fix repair shop. Tires that look like this should only go one place, and that's in the trash. The owner of this car said that his car sounds like a metallic rattlesnake, but only when he takes off. Customer came in with a broken AMG rim from his vintage Mercedes, asking if the shop wanted to trade him for a newer one, since the rim was apparently pretty rare to come by these days. The shop owner politely rejected the customer's generous offer. Customerstates changed wipers himself, but now they get stuck in the middle of the windshield. And this customer came in saying that her car has started to squeal like a pig and doesn't want to start, after she pressure washed the engine bay a few days ago. The owner of this classic JDM came in asking if there's anything the shop could do about their vibrating gear stick. Customerstates was out hunting elk when deers broke into his car and tore up the interior, as the car was parked for a week on a parking spot near a forest. And this customer's car somehow rolled in with the worst oil leak the mechanics had ever seen. The owner didn't say much as to what had happened, but the mechanics later discovered that the customer had replaced the valve cover gasket, head gasket, oil filter gasket, and oil pan gasket with some RTV silicone, which had caused all the leaks. This semi-truck trailer rolled in after it had a tire blowout on the highway. Customer came in saying that they installed new belts a couple weeks back, but thinks he must have tightened them a bit too hard because the car now refuses to start. The owner of this car complained about their driver's cab smelling like a mix between a sweaty ballsack and cup of sour cat piss. There were no cats or ball sacks hanging around, just a pack of meat that the customer had forgot to put in the fridge. This customer's car had a slight coolant leak, and it almost took the mechanics the whole day to find it because it was coming from a coolant hose that was pretty hard to get to. Customer came in because they had a strange sound from their front wheels at all speeds, ever since a friend of theirs had renovated their front suspension using only the cheapest parts they could find from Alibaba. The owner of this camper van came in saying there's a rattling sound coming from the roof and thinks it might be the solar panel they recently installed that's about to come off, but turns out that things weren't that serious. Customer states, car tickles my feet when turning. This rental car was brought back to the car rental company looking like this, and when asked what had happened, the customer just replied, "My friend invited me to a house party and the rest is history." Customer rolled in with their car saying that they mixed a bunch of fuel additives into the engine to try and get a better gas mileage, but had ended up with double the gas mileage and a blown head gasket instead. This customer's classic Honda Civic had over 200,000 miles on it, and the head gasket had finally decided to give up. The customer ended up installing a new head gasket and also rebuilt the engine while he was at it. When your oil change looks like this, you better pray the insurance gods go easy on you. Customer came in and said that he wasn't aware that his car came with a built-in steam sauna. Turned out to be a coolant leak caused by some old and crusty coolant hoses and a cracked expansion tank. The owner of this car wanted to trade it in for a newer model and claimed that his current model did in fact have backup sensors and wanted a higher price because of it. But this is what the mechanic found. Customer states, "Tubo no go vroom vroom tushi tushi, please fix." The owner of this car came in for some new brake rotors and brake pads, but when the mechanic went to pick it up from the parking lot, he saw that the car would also most likely need new tires, wheel bearings, a new window, and some bodywork. This car rolled in after the owner had hit a boulder on a small side road and now needs an alignment. The owner of this car came in to get a new Bluetooth stereo installed, but when the mechanic saw all these bugs crawling around, they had to bring out the hazmat suits. Customer states, tire leak after hitting a piece of wood on their driveway. And this car was in desperate need of some new brake calipers, brake caliper brackets, and brake rotors. Customer came in with their Chevrolet Tracker, saying that anytime they accelerate or brake too hard, they have a loud thump and clunk sound. The mechanics found this poorly secured bike rack to be the issue. The owner of this car said that they have a minor leak from their radiator, but that they'd use some stop leak to fix it temporarily. Yeah, I don't think that's doing much for you, bud. And this beat up car rolled in with a giant hole in the undercarriage after the owner said that he drove over a thin tractor tire filled with a mix of sand and concrete. And this car didn't come in a minute too soon to get new brakes installed. The owner of this car had benched it on a dyno the day before, but it didn't go entirely to plan and is now selling what's left of the car and engine at an auction. This customer rolled in because their car had overheated and the mechanic discovered that they had been driving around with a broken water pump for quite a while. Customer states, loud popping and clunking sound whenever they turn after a friend helped them repair their old tie rod ends and a couple bushings. And this tire rolled in all screwed up. The mechanic went to work on this car to replace a couple of seat belts in the back when he discovered that it was quite crowded. Boiling coolant is never a good sign. Customer rolled in with an overheated engine after he had attempted to replace the head gasket by himself a few days before, and this is what the technician found. This car came in being extra musty, crusty, and rusty. The owner of this car had to pull over as he had a coolant hose burst while he was driving to work. And this customer came in asking the mechanic if the shop could do some work on his turbo diesel Prius. Customer states, car handles like a turd on wheels. The owner of this truck rolled in to get a suspension noise fixed and to get an oil change when the mechanic noticed that the customer had done some pretty questionable work on the frame by himself. Customer states, car starts but sometimes has starting issues. The mechanic found the starting motor to be on its last legs. The owner of this car said that his car has started to accelerate really poorly ever since he performed an oil change on it 10 days before. And this customer had some troubles getting their window to shut. Turned out to be a faulty power window control module. This customer's Nissan Qashqai was in because it had started to knock, had really bad gas mileage, and also didn't accelerate very well. The mechanic found that the customer hadn't changed oil in it in over 48,000 miles. The owner of this car had just changed brake pads at a local gas station, but had to pull over because his brakes had started to smoke. Turns out that he accidentally installed the brake pads backwards. And this customer had gone shopping on Temu and ended up getting a bunch of stuff they didn't actually need. The owner of this truck came in with a giant hole in the undercarriage, transmission, and oil pan after they had picked up a friend from a local gun store who had bought a used hunting rifle that had accidentally gone off while they were driving. Customerstates installed new wiper blades, but they work worse than the old ones. This customer rolled in with their BMW saying their gear stick rattles like crazy. The mechanics replaced the rubber shifter bushings and it fixed the issue. This customer rolled in with a coolant leak that was pretty sneaky to find. The mechanic sprayed some soapy water on the radiator and found it. And the owner of this car rolled into the shop saying that he had tried tweaking the gear ratio by himself, but had just made a mess and now needs a new differential. This mechanic was detailing this customer's car when he found that the customer had left him a little snack under the back seat. The owner of this truck had repaired a broken fuel line with some electrical tape, but when he went driving the next day, he noticed that the truck was running out of gas very fast and came into the shop to have it checked out. This customer didn't have too much money, but wanted to go traveling with his wife, so he built his own camper van and was now in to have the brakes checked. The mechanics advised him not to go on long trips with it, as some of the welds on the frame were pretty bad, amongst other things. And the owner of this car had tried repairing a brake line by himself, but had just ended up causing an even bigger brake leak instead. This Honda Civic rolled into the shop because the AC had started to run really poorly, and the mechanic found the AC drain hole to be all plugged up. This car came in to get a new tire repair kit, but when the mechanics opened the trunk, they found that a mouse had turned the old repair kit into his home. Customer states that his trunk sounds like Chewbacca. And this truck was brought in on a tow truck with a broken differential after the customer lost a tug war to his buddy's F450. The owner of this car rolled in after they said that they hit a curb a bit harder than normal, and when having it on the lift, the mechanic found that the customer needs much of the front end suspension replaced. Customer came in complaining about a broken cabin fan, but it didn't turn out to be that serious. This customer rolled in with the kind of light show that you don't want to see in your dashboard. And this customer came in saying that they have a strange thump whenever they turn right, ever since their wife borrowed the car to go grocery shopping the other day. And this car came in after the customer had installed a new exhaust system together with his father, but now complained about the car screaming at him. And this Toyota Highlander rolled into the shop because the engine light was on, it had horrible gas mileage, and the owner had a thick oily smell in the driver's cab. The mechanics found that the oil hadn't been changed in over 88,000 miles, which was about 9 years ago, but the customer claimed that he did in fact do regular oil changes every year. When coolant starts coming out of places that it shouldn't, it's probably best to call your local mechanic. The owner of this car came in saying that his window sounds like Pac-Man. This customer had recently refurbished their brake rotors and got a new brake pads installed at another shop, but they had ignored doing anything about the rusty brake shields, which had ended up causing some damage to the inside of the rims. And the owner of this car was incapable of reading warning signs. Customer came in complaining about a clunking sound when going over speed bumps and that the car felt unsafe to drive, ever since another shop had done some welding work on the strut mounts 2 weeks ago to fix some rust. And this customer had a really wobbly steering wheel after she had pumped up her tire at a local gas station with what she thought was an air pump, but turned out being a CO2 extinguisher that looked nearly identical to the air pumps at the station. This car came in as the customer suspected he either had a rock in one of his wheels or an engine knock. But this is what the mechanics found. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and until next time.